Suitability. Welcome. This is a little talk where I will be speaking about basically testing your suitability for AI safety and how you might go about it and how you might look at your own perspective and your own career path towards this whole field, which is, clearly growing quite a bit. So you might have seen GPT-4 coming out. You might have seen a lot of other things now, and of course, this seems to be the time. This seems to be the time for AI safety and making sure that these systems become safe, because they are clearly becoming much more capable as we work with all this. And shortly about me. So as he said, my name is Esben Kran. I'm from Copenhagen, currently living there, flying a bit around as you do in EA. And you're very welcome to doing this talk. Just ask questions whenever. I want to address any questions you might have or any worries during the talk as well. But otherwise, we'll just go through the slides and we'll end it with questions too. And yeah, I come from some brain-computer interfacing research and social neuroscience, along with game development, funnily enough, now in AI safety. So a little bit about applied research first, so you get a bit of context. We are sort of trying to ensure that we have a benevolent future between humans and AI in the future, and that we avoid uncontrollable AI risk scenarios. And the way we do this is by facilitating direct research and also just helping people enter the field in general. And with this, we're doing the alignment jams, which are these monthly hackathons. Another one is happening next weekend already that you can check out on alignmentjam.com. A lot of wonderful people helping us there, a lot of starter resources within different topics. And the newsletter, also for people to keep updated and so on. And the Apart Lab, which is like a publication track work on mentoring and so on. Working with Faisal, who was on this talk, but unfortunately couldn't come for this one today. So, what is suitability for AI safety in the first place? There are some different words from the community as well, but it's basically, from my perspective, it's what do you get excited by to some degree? What are you working on currently that you're like, okay, this is really interesting, and how does that relate to AI safety? And then also, which type of career path, which sort of impact are you looking for right now? So you might get excited by the problems themselves. You might be excited by creating products or something. Like, this is completely different topics, right? But there is a lot of work in just creating the ecosystem and creating capability for others to work on this in a good way. And we also see more and more work with entrepreneurship in AI safety on actually executing on some of the research we're doing, like the evals work or different works within benchmarks and within testing AI systems today. You can also, of course, be interested in solving bottlenecks in general, and then there are a bunch of other roles within operation capacity that might be great. There are some words from the AI safety suite. There's this word called fit. Testing your fit for AI safety would be something that might be mentioned there. I think in general, you shouldn't do this thing, you shouldn't look at the field and be like, oh, will I fit or not? Am I suitable or not? You should more be like, okay, I'll try out this thing in AI safety. I'll try doing this type of research at this, for example, at a hackathon or at any other type of event. I'll try this out, and then over time, you'll realize, is this something that fits you or not? And you'll realize, okay, well, which direction do I want to take this topically? And there is also sometimes the talk of super geniuses, oh, will I actually be able to help solving the alignment problem, the giant problem that's going to save humanity? And in general, I think, yes, you will. And most people will, because everyone's just human in reality, even the people at the top of AI safety. When we talk, they're also just trying to do their best work. And if you do as well, then that's perfect. And then there's this concept of truth-seeking and being a rationalist or having good epistemics and these sorts of things. And yes, that's important for being human in general. But in this case, it is mostly yes, of course, just try to do the best work and try to do object level work. And of course, as I mentioned, we try to help curious people like you in this sense. And come and talk with us. I have Sabrina as well, our community manager. You're welcome to chat with her during the weekend. Nice. And as mentioned, I think what matters a lot in AI safety is finding your own path. Because AI safety right now, we see some specific agendas happening or specific types of research directions where what excites me in general is if people take their own perspectives on these things, because there's so many topics, and I'll get into that on the next slide as well. There's so many topics also outside of the AI safety suite as we know it in EA, which are super interesting and actually has like valid contributions to the field as well. And right now we also see some convergence between some of the AI safety work that has been happening earlier and some of the machine learning work that's happening in academia, for example. So in this case, it's like, okay, think about what excites you, how does that relate to what AI safety is, and then like upskill in the relevant areas and go into it with that attitude. And another thing is like think about the problem. Don't just necessarily read a post and be like, oh yeah, now I know what that is because this famous person said that is what it is. But just think about it, like read Alignment Forum. Alignment Forum is an amazing platform. I think there's a lot of really, really good stuff happening there, and it's a very interesting scientific platform as well. I recommend you read it because that's where a lot of the top in the AI safety from EA are writing stuff. But try to read that as little as possible, which is still quite a bit, and then go towards focusing on your interest area and like machine learning, for example, or maths, or category theory, cognitive modeling, who knows, software engineering. And then also become part of a community. Share your thoughts and get some feedback from wonderful people out there trying to also do the same things as you. There's this wonderful website called aisafety.community, which has a list of a lot of different communities where you can join there and just write with people and share your views. And then there's this concept of forming your own views in AI safety. So Neil Nanda had a great talk in 2022 where he talked about in AI safety there's this perspective on creating an inside view versus deferring, where it's set up quite binarily to some degree. So the inside view is the thinking about the problem yourself and just, oh, I have the inside view, I know what to do, I know what's the real thing now, and all the others are doing their own thing. And deferring is just reading and being like, yeah, that sounds good, and coming away from it with that. But in reality, it's a thing in between, right? You're not just doing either. And inside views, they emerge, like in any other research, from doing real research, and then getting a perspective from doing the actual work. So this is at least my perspective, and I think the perspective of many in academia as well, and for that matter, in AI safety research. And in reality, like AI safety research isn't that much harder than many other fields. Like when I talk with, for example, I was talking with Connor from Conjecture, where it's like, okay, when do we expect to have the alignment problem solved? Probably about 15 years or so. Like, it's probably not as hard as some of the hardest math problems, but it's probably quite a bit harder than any simple engineering problem. And so in this sense, just remember that it's like, we're actually working with a real field here. The only thing is that we're on a tight deadline if you follow the timelines of what AI safety researchers think about. And then the interesting part is also the shift that has happened from 2021 to 2023. It's this paradigmatic convergence, which basically what's meant by that is that we see a bunch of different paradigms or different methods of working with AI safety converging to this view where you are working on how do neural networks represent the world to some degree, and in different ways you engage with this question. And you also see massive organizations in AI safety like Anthropic, OpenAI is thinking more about it, DeepMind is thinking more about it. So all this is leading to much more engagement internationally and outside of AI safety as we might look at it. So this is a great chance and a great time to get into it because of this as well. And then from this, there's also these culture shifts and more. Like there's a lot of effects that are happening right now because it is becoming such a massive issue, and a lot of people are giving it a lot of attention. So I think it's a great time, and maybe you'll think that as well. And then there is a question of, we are at an effective altruism conference. This is a question of existential risk, and I just want to also say, remember to do the most good. There are some times in AI safety where you just where you sort of get bogged down in the details where we actually want to mitigate this existential risk and just remembering to think about this. And we are, we're looking at some of the largest models in the world. This is sort of a pressing issue. Now is the time. And remember to ask the hard questions. Is what we're working on actually the thing we should be working on? And what type of career path and so on should I take in that? I also think at the same time, of course, we should take care of ourselves. And in this case, there's a lot of work in getting the skills to work on AI safety, where you can really, you can jump into OpenAI, something like that, working at an organization. You can jump into a lab here at Cambridge, or like with David Kruger, for example, or with Hayden Belfield, or some of the people here, on doing direct work and just upskilling within AI safety. And then afterwards ask the hard questions, figure out what is the real direction we want to take this. And my personal take is also avoid doomism in this case. It's like be excited, positive, and optimistic about these things, because 15 years, it's like, okay, we can actually solve alignment to some degree. This seems like a solvable issue, and I think there's much more productivity happening when we are positive and optimistic about what we are able to do and what we're able to research and what we see in the field right now. Of course, then you can write reports that are pessimistic, but just be optimistic in your personal work. So that's perfect. And another thing is send emails to people in general. Sometimes we think that the top people are too busy talking with us, but just send emails and they will probably answer. They might even set up a meeting. They're quite a bit more busy now than a year ago, but because things have changed. But it's this thing of imposter syndrome and so on. Everybody has that, and I think just write people, and we're all just trying to do our best and want to help everyone, especially talented people like you coming to this wonderful conference. And yeah, on the existential risk point, there was this wonderful little joke coming from anyways, I probably can't say, but GPT-4's performance on various benchmarks, while impressive, suggests scaling curves are bending down somewhat. My timelines have pushed out slightly. I'm now buying green bananas, which basically just means that we're seeing GPT-4's performance might not actually fit what we expected with growth. So now we're buying green bananas because they have time to ripen before AGI comes. I thought this was hilarious, maybe. but just saw it this morning. But yeah, it is an existential risk. We're trying to mitigate it, and remember that in your work as well. And then there is a question of where you might want to go in AI safety. And there's a lot of different options. 3 main ones, really. There's academia, which is quite slow and safe. And in general, I think AI safety looks at academia, I don't know. When I talk with people, they have quite a bit of mistrust in academia. And I sometimes think that it's a misplaced mistrust, that academia is actually really good. And one of the great things is also that it's slow and safe, and it creates a lot of good agendas. Like you have a lot of different thoughts from academia coming out because of the structures of the incentives. Maybe not finished safety work in like that sense, but a lot of different ideas. And then the other category is OpenAI, DeepMind, Anthropic. Working at the massive teams, and this of course requires like world level talent. And I don't know if they are not just building AGI to some degree. So it's up to you to figure out if you want to work there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in getting, going in this direction with machine learning and going hard on actually working with current state-of-the-art models. Then you have the third category, which is like the actual alignment industry labs. And I guess applied research could also be here to some degree. But you have Conjecture, you have FAR AI, you have Redwood, and ARC, so Alignment Research Center. And these are working 100% on alignment. Some of them are non-profits as well, and others are not, but they're generally for benefit for the public. And their work is great. They're trying to focus on a few different things. If you want to know, just ask on the swap card, and maybe I can jump into an organization and talk about that. And then there's a question of institutionalization and separation of AI safety with EA and AI safety with also necessarily rationalism, where I think it's good for you just to do AI safety from outside of EA and interact with EA as you would here, for example, but not necessarily getting too bogged down in the social structures here, but also investing in your career capital in other directions as well. And AI safety outside of EA is growing really fast in general. And I think sometimes we miss that in AI safety. So there's a lot of different directions you can work academically. And I was just doing, just like going on Google Scholar, checking out different topics. So you have the concrete problems on AI safety from Amadei et al., which is like a pretty classic paper within AI safety that has, 1911 citations. So you can see, okay, that's like roughly the AI safety field to some degree. But then you have neural Trojans, which is another topic. They have a bit fewer, but then you have stuff like differential privacy, which has more citations. You have stuff like out-of-distribution benchmarks, which has also more, like slightly more. But these are all topics that are like quite interesting. And adversarial attacks, feature visualization is the whole interpretability work. You have cryptography, cybersecurity, simple emergent stuff with robotics. You have cognitive modeling and learning theory. All these things are like, they're emerging and they're pretty big already and they're quite relevant for AI safety. So you can work from these areas as well, and depending on what your interests are in this. And in general, it also seems like the field has like limited capacity for talent. So there's so many really, really talented people who want to come in. And there's just not capacity within AI safety organizations specifically to take up all the talent. So I generally encourage people to take those first steps yourselves, organize locally with your friends or whatever to do a little fun project or work from some of the projects that are online as well. So you can take these object level concrete steps towards figuring out if it fits you as well. And there's also this concept of agendas in AI safety, like Paul Cristiano's agenda, John Wentworth's agenda, or these things, where usually in academia and research work, these arise from the object level work. And just want to mention, again, that you don't have to have these special views or this special agenda yourself, but you can just work on an actual research project and then figure it out from there. And agendas, pretty weird concept, and they usually take a while to actually build yourself from this object level perspective. And then there's a question of mentorship and collaboration. So in general, it's of course really, really good to work with mentors and work with friends and collaborators on a lot of your research work. That depends on your personality type as well, but I personally think it's great to like interact with people and have a chance to talk about AI safety and your path. And I think last year it was a bit overemphasized, but I still think it's very important to have mentors and to like talk with people who are capable. And I think these communities are quite good at that. So the Apart Lab is one example where we do very tight mentorship collaboration, and you can keep an eye out for some announcements that might come from that. But otherwise, there's a lot of really, really interesting training programs like the CERIMATS, MLabs, AI Safety Camp, Refine, which is now closed a bit, and Machine Learning for Good, and more acronyms from here and there around the globe. And I think even Cambridge is doing a few things with AI safety as well. And join these communities. And there's also topic-based communities like shard theory, which is an agenda, cyborgism, which is another type of agenda as well. And talk with real life people as well, and get some good chats there. And then there's a question of staying up to date. And in this field, things are changing very rapidly. So it's, I have a little story where I did a talk on interpretability, and someone was working on it like 3-4 months before, like working on research in interpretability outside AI safety 3-4 months before. And most of what I was talking about was completely new. So like interpretability especially is just going extremely fast. Like every 2 weeks there's a new very, very interesting progression in how we do the methods and how we do interpretability. Sometimes, when you submit a paper and you're like, it'll come out in half a year or in a year, then that paper is not really following with the times. But this is quite interesting. Sometimes hits academia a bit. And then there's a bunch of newsletters and channels for following along as well, which I recommend, especially if you might not have time to read every single thing coming out of the alignment forum or something like that. Well, in this case, there's a chance to both follow our newsletters, but also follow some of, like I found this random YouTube channel, AI Explained, which is surprisingly good, like surprisingly has quite good takes on on what's going on with the modern language models and how, what are the safety issues there. And then the ML Safety newsletter from the Center for AI Safety in Berkeley with Dan Hendricks and team there is also very good, but it comes out less often. And then you, of course, have the platforms. There's like archive monitors. There's some bots here and there on different telegrams and whatnot. And then Twitter. Twitter is honestly a surprisingly good place to stay up to date as well. Also a surprisingly good place to waste all your time. So that's up to you. And on your right here, you see just models are scaling. It goes fast. Yes. And some of the concrete tips I also want to give you. Much of it is like from my own path as well. So in EA in general, there's this. It's very, very good to do sort of a perspective on what is your career path. What do you want to achieve with life? What is like? Do you want to help humanity? Do you want to make the world a better place? And probably you do. Hopefully you are here. I usually assume that when I talk with EAs. But I did a thing where I wrote, that was before EA, but I wrote like just a report to myself on what are the impactful technologies that will affect the future. And from this came like brain-computer interfacing in our case, but later I went into AI safety. And I just recommend, like, this is a very interesting exercise for you to see how do you look at the different technologies, how do you look at how you fit in with them, and also the different impact paths or different course areas we're working with in AI, or in EA and AI safety more generally. And then there's a question of just the concrete steps, figuring out your life, creating measurable daily progress, where Gabriel Mukabe from the Stanford AI alignment group, he made this like RPG-based learning system where he had like level 1, level 2, up to level 7 of learning AI safety, and that should take 3 years, was his estimate. But like these things of creating measurable progress, where the thing I did, I just had like I had like a piece of paper and then just created a calendar over days where I was like, okay, read 3 papers per day, and then I would scrape it when I would like call it in when I'd done it. Just like all these normal productivity tips or ways to engage with the topic of AI safety. And then I recommend that you like just create and join weekly meetups. There's surprisingly a lot of people who are interested in AI around the globe, and from this, a subset of them are very interested in AI safety. So if you just like go on Facebook or go on Meetup or whatever and make an event like in your apartment and be like, hey, yeah, join, I'll buy a few snacks. Then there'll probably come like 3-5 people depending on where you are. And that's wonderful to figure out that there are people actually interested in this in your local area as well. And in this case, it's Cambridge. I think there are quite a few interested in it. But I recommend doing this also just to get a place to talk about it and a place to engage with the topic. And in that sense, talk with friends about AI safety as well. Another project is like, another thing you can do is the Gauntlet, which is basically 20 days of reading like 20 texts on AI safety, where it's on readingwhatwecan.com. But there are these 20 AI safety books and papers that you can read. And then, in 20 days, you're actually pretty caught up. And there are some specific methods that I can dive into if you have questions about it to actually achieve this and do it in a sustainable fashion as well. And then you have the wonderful courses around the globe. You have like AGI Safety Fundamentals. You also have the Introduction to Machine Learning Safety. You have some other courses both here, but also other places where you might come from, which I recommend coming into because they give you a really, really good foundation for alignment theory and for understanding what the problems of AI safety are. So these are some of the ways you can like test that suitability. And then there's of course the hackathons as well. So the reason why we make these hackathons is because we want to create this optimistic, productive, and like a very good way to get real work done very quickly and do these object level things. So I recommend that we're also doing them. So I have a bias, but I think it's a wonderful way to get engaged with AI safety and testing your fit and testing your suitability. Basically, just doing it and figuring out if it's something that makes sense. And from that perspective, we also have on Tuesday at some offices here in Cambridge. It's on the satellite events. We have a small one-day AI governance hackathon where you can come in and you can work with different cases to write during just one day a like proposal for a policy or whatnot. And also possibly win some prizes when we do the international one next weekend. Otherwise, there are a few conference tips. This is quite rudimentary. There are some others who have also talked about it, like getting the most out of your EAGX and the daft questions talk, which is happening simultaneously as this, but also later. And I recommend that something that they do quite well in San Francisco is actually that they like ended with anything I can do for you, and just like, then suddenly you have just a multiplicative effect of everyone saying to each other and everyone helping each other go to the next step, or like, connecting them with someone, connecting them with funding, connecting them with people, connecting them with collaborators, providing them with community, like all these things, which I really like. So end your one-on-ones with what can I do for you? And everyone are your friends. We're all EAs here. Just like ask the bad questions, ask the good questions. Talk with strangers on your way around the guild hall here, because everyone's really interested in this stuff. And one-on-ones are a good way, but strangers are also a great way. And I recommend that you go to this daft questions talk later too. And some of these things from the previous slide, you can also, you can do on a piece of paper while you're here. You can think about what are the next steps I want to take and so on. And jumping into that, I would love if you just take 3 minutes with the person beside you, just to talk about, okay, what are my next concrete steps that I would like to take with testing my suitability, or like figuring out what I'd like to look at with AI safety. So I'll just set a timer here, and you can just chat with the person beside you. All right, wonderful. I'll just stop you here, and I hope you got a few good chats out of it, and had a chance to figure out what'll be your next EAGxCambridge concrete steps for thinking about these questions as well. And maybe you even have some questions now, which have arisen from these conversations. And if you do, then you can ask them on Swapcard. I think we'll have a monitor here for that, or a moderator, as it's called in English. And otherwise, you can also raise your hand, and we'll figure it out there.
Thank you so very much. First, Esben, fantastic talk. I wish I'd heard it a year ago. So can we please have a round of applause for it?